Chapter 3 of A Story of One Short Life, 1783 to 1818, by Elisabeth G. Stryker. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3 Obookiah in Hawaii, in America. Henry Obookiah was born in Hawaii about the year 1792. When about 12 years old, two parties contending for dominion disturbed the peace of the island. He alone survived the persecutions of his family. He was captured and carried home by the man who killed his parents, but finally made his way to an uncle. Though he was well treated, he suffered from loneliness. He said of himself, "When I was at play with other children, after we had made an end of playing, they returned to their parents. But I was returned into tears, for I have no home, neither father nor mother. Poor boy am I." He determined to go to some other country and forget his sorrow. The captain of an American vessel showed him kindness, and consented to take him on board. He brought him to America, and took him to his home town in New Haven. Henry was a clumsy, stupid-looking boy at this time, his appearance not revealing the undeveloped depths of his nature. He made the acquaintance of some of the students at Yale College, and of the Rev. E. W. Dwight. These friends, becoming interested in his welfare, offered to teach him. He accepted their aid with avidity, and made wonderful progress, at the same time becoming more and more lovable and attractive. A fun-loving disposition soon showed itself. He had great difficulty in pronouncing the letter R, giving it the sound of L. Every day his teacher tried to help him, saying, "Try, Obookiah, it is very easy." This seemed to amuse the boy greatly, though as yet he could not express himself in English. Some time after, when he could speak more readily, he was describing to his teacher some of the customs of his native land. Clasping his hands together, and adjusting his thumbs, he formed a cup which he raised to his lips to show how his countrymen drank from a spring. His instructor tried to do the same, but before he could reach his mouth with his hands, the cup would be inverted so that the contents, had there been any, would have been spilled. Obookiah laughed heartily and said, "Try, Mr. Dwight, it is very easy." One day he mimicked the gait of some of his friends so cleverly that there was no mistaking who he intended to personate. His teacher then mocked his own awkward style, when he exclaimed several times, "Me walk so?" Being assured that it was true, he rolled upon the floor until his mirth exhausted his strength. After being instructed about the true God, idol worship seemed to him ridiculous. He said, "Hawaii gods, they wood, burn. Me go home, put 'em in fire, burn 'em up. They no see, no hear, no anything." Then added, "We make them our God." Looking up, He make us. After Mr. Mills arrived in New Haven, he became a friend of Mr. Dwight's, and being often in his room, occasionally heard this boy recite. He became greatly attracted to him, and began to cherish a plan for his future. He wanted to see Obookiah a Christian, educated, and then a missionary to his native land. One evening Mr. Mills had not been long in Mr. Dwight's room, when Obookiah came in with a very gloomy face. He said he had no place to live. Mr. didn't want him any more, and Miss had threatened to take away his new clothes. Mr. Mills told him he would take him to his own home, and that he had clothes enough for both. This cheered the poor disconsolate fellow, who soon went with Mr. Mills to Torringford, and was placed under the care of those whose benevolence was without bound or check, or limit to confine it. Here he spent part of the year 1810, and was treated wisely and affectionately. Mrs. Mills taught him the catechism, and her son Jeremiah assisted him in his studies. At different times and frequently their house was his home. He became gentle and refined in his manner, a Bible-loving, earnest, prayerful Christian. His friends, who had been so careful in the training of his mind and heart, had not neglected his hands. He was taught much that was useful and practical, particularly in farming. He surprised all by the quickness and eagerness with which he learned. He was both inquisitive and acquisitive to a remarkable degree. He persisted in knowing and getting, that he might impart what he had gained to his own countrymen. To return to them for their enlightenment was his consuming desire. He visited many families and many of the churches of New England, always creating a deep interest in his mission. Many people who had affirmed that the heathen could never be reclaimed from their low estate were forced to change their opinion after seeing and knowing Obookiah, and were inspired to pray and give for his and other unevangelized races. The presence of Obookiah in this country, as well as of other heathen youth, together with the desire to educate some of our own Indians, led to the formation of the Foreign Mission School at Cornwall, Massachusetts. This school was under the care of the American Board 10 years. Its pupils were from many different nations. In 1826 it was discontinued, for by this time the missions were able to educate the young at their several stations. Obookiah was pursuing his studies here, when, in the beginning of the year 1818, he was stricken with typhus fever, and suffered several weeks. On the 17th of February, 1818, he shook hands with all his companions present, and with perfect composure addressed to them the parting salutation of his native language: "Aloha oe, my love be with you." Mrs. Stone, in whose house he died, and who cared for him with Christian kindness during his sickness, said, this had been one of the happiest and most profitable periods of her life, that she had been more than rewarded for her cares and watchings by day and night, in being permitted to witness his excellent example and to hear his godly conversation. Almost immediately after his death, missionaries, inspired by his life, hastened to accomplish his cherished purpose, the establishment of a mission in the Sandwich Islands. Mills was far from home, but returning at the time, not knowing Obookiah had died, he said to a friend, "If it please God that I may arrive safely, I think that I shall take Obookiah and go to the Sandwich Islands, and there I will end my life." From that day to this, missionaries and missions, schools, churches, and Christians have multiplied, till all those islands name the name of Christ. End of chapter 3.